Today, we're diving into a source that makes a truly jaw-dropping claim that a multi-billion-dollar federal program, one that was actually created to protect children, is what the author calls a family-killing machine. It's a heavy accusation, so how could a system supposedly designed for good go so horribly wrong? Well, let's break down the argument presented in this powerful critique. And this quote right here, this is the heart of the whole argument. The author paints this picture of a system that presents itself as a hero, a knight in shining armor, but is actually, in their words, a ravenous beast. So what on earth could turn a knight into a monster? Let's follow the author's logic and take a look at the evidence they lay out. Okay, here's how we're going to break this all down. We're going to follow the author's argument in 5 parts. We'll start with the big accusation and the program at its core. Then we'll get into the nuts and bolts of how the system allegedly works, look at a specific person they put in the crosshairs, and then see the tragic human toll they claim it all leads to. And finally, we'll look at their call to action. All right, first up, the $10 billion accusation. According to the source, this entire mess stems from one single piece of legislation, one that has been shaping the child welfare system for over 40 years now. So the program we're talking about, the one at the very center of all this, is called Title IV-E. It was created way back in 1980. Now, its official goal sounds simple enough. Give federal money to states to help care for kids who've been removed from their homes. Sounds pretty good on paper, right? But the story, according to this source, isn't in its purpose. It's in its scale. And get this, the scale is just massive. The source states that for fiscal year 2024 alone, the federal government is spending $10 billion on this one program. I mean, that's a huge financial engine, and the author's entire argument hinges not just on where that money goes, but on what they claim has to happen before a single dollar ever gets spent. And that leads us right into our second section, how the system works. This is where the author really breaks down the funding mechanics to argue that the program doesn't just have a flaw. It has a dangerous financial incentive literally built into its DNA. So here's the question the author really wants us to think about. If the goal is to help children, does the funding structure actually do that? Or does it, as they allege, actually encourage the exact opposite of what it's supposed to do? Now, take a look at this. This is where the money flows. The source points out how the federal government pays states back for a huge chunk of their costs. We're talking foster payments, admin salaries, staff training, even thousands of dollars in bonuses for adoptions. See a pattern here? Every single one of these payments happens after a child has already been taken from their family and put into the system. And boom, this right here, this is the author's smoking gun. The whole process gets kicked off only after a child is removed from their home. The author argues there's no equivalent pot of money for things that could keep a family together in the first place. Stuff like therapy or rent assistance. So the key takeaway from this analysis is that for a state to get this federal money, it first has to separate a family. Okay, let's move on to Section 3. To make this whole argument feel less like just numbers and policies, the author puts a single bureaucrat right in the crosshairs, using her story as a case study for how this system allegedly plays out on the ground. So on one side, you've got the official job title of Jean Simonowitz-Smart, public servant, nursing director, but on the other side, that's how our source characterizes her. They portray her not as a protector, but as a key cog in the machine, an enabler who allegedly rubber-stamped flimsy reasons for removing kids from their homes, and in doing so, fed what the author calls the Cash for Kids pipeline. The author then lays out this timeline to connect the dots. The argument is that the practices from her time in the early 90s set a dangerous precedent. This, the author claims, created a pattern of negligence that led to horrific tragedies down the road, like the Gabriel Fernandez case, and is even linked to a massive $4 billion settlement LA County is now expecting to pay out for abuse claims. And this all leads to what the author argues is the most important part, the devastating human toll. In this section, we're going to look at the staggering numbers the source uses to argue that this system has caused widespread, heartbreaking suffering. 390,000. According to the source, that's how many children were in the U.S. foster care system as of 2023. And while that number is down from its peak, the author doesn't see it as progress. They describe it as a vast warehouse of despair. Now, this is a stat that the author says is absolutely crucial to understanding the whole problem. They claim that only 20% of kids are taken from their homes for what you and I would think of as actual abuse, physical or sexual. The overwhelming majority, 80%, are removed for reasons lumped under neglect, which the author argues is very often just poverty given a different, more damning label. And if you zoom out, the total number is just wow. The author claims that since Title IV-E was created back in 1980, over 23 million children have been cycled through the foster care system. It's a number meant to just floor you, to show the sheer scale of the system's reach over the last 4 decades. So what happens to these kids when they leave the system? Well, according to the author, the picture is pretty grim. They present data suggesting that somewhere between 20 and 30% of former foster youth end up struggling with homelessness or addiction, a rate that is dramatically, tragically higher than for the general population. Okay, so after laying out this incredibly damning case, what's the solution? What does the author want us to do about it? The final section of their piece isn't just a critique, it's a direct, urgent call to action. The author's demands are really clear. They start with things individuals can do. Share this information, get it out there, and use tools like the Freedom of Information Act, the law that lets regular citizens request government records to investigate what's happening in your own local agencies. But the real core demands are for massive systemic change. Completely overhaul Title IV-E's funding to prioritize preventing problems in the first place, and shift the entire system's focus away from separation and towards supporting families. And so this all boils down to one final, really provocative question from the author. If a system's financial incentives are fundamentally at odds with its stated mission, can you really just tweak it? Can it be reformed? Or is the only real answer to tear it down and replace it with something new entirely? It's a powerful question to think about. Thanks for joining this explainer.